The overridden activity method on create for the WeatherViewer activity does the initial setup of the activity, and as we often do, we first inflate the GUI for the activity. And remember that this GUI now consists of not only traditional types of GUI components, but also the concept called fragments. And in particular, we have a cities fragment on the left side of the GUI. And as we often do, we like to get references to various GUI controls and components on the screen so that we can interact with them programmatically. Now, normally we do that with find view by ID. But in this case, we're now dealing with a fragment that we want to get a reference to, and we have to do that a slightly different way. So as you can see here on line 65 and 66, what we first do is get the fragment manager from our activity, and that gives me back, as you might expect, a fragment manager object, which contains a method find fragment by ID, and that will then go locate a fragment with a specific ID, in our case the one with the ID cities, and it gives that back to us as a fragment object. So if I hover over find fragment by ID here, you can see it gives back just a superclass fragment object, but specifically we are getting back a cities fragment in this case, as we know from how we defined the layout. So we cast the return value of this expression to cities fragment and assign it to our variable list cities fragment. Then at line 69 and 70, we use that to register a cities change listener, which we're going to define later on in this file, and that's going to enable the WeatherViewer app to respond to changes in the list of cities that's displayed in the cities fragment. Line 73 just creates our hash map that we'll use to map city names to corresponding zip codes. We create our handler, which is going to enable us to interact with the GUI in the GUI thread of execution with operations that are performed from other threads of execution. At line 77, we load up the shared preferences for our app, which is stored under the name specified with this constant. And then finally, we call our own method setUpTabs, which, as its name implies, is going to set up the tabs in the action bar.